Hi, so I'm going to try and we're going to do particle physics, anyway, just physics, like tiny little physics, electricity physics, chemistry physics, like that sort of thing, from the standpoint of this, like, fluidic understanding of reality. And it's kind of going to be a little bit of it has these elements of grand unification because it's attempting to describe reality, like all of it, all at once. Like I want to describe everything that's happening all at once, right? Even if I'm describing atoms, I'm made of atoms. So that description of atoms I have to see that on this level, right? So anytime that you're coming up with a scientific framework or a theory, you have to be able to see it at all levels. Like if there's an aspect of reality where you can't see the framework that you're talking about, then you would have to say, oh, it's not true. It's not universally applicable. That place right there is obeying different rules. Right? So the basic rule that we can get is everything is three things at minimum. Like in terms of the shape that our concepts have to have. Every single concept has to be like three separate, unique concepts, and none of those concepts can exist without the other concepts. So anytime you're thinking, you have to be thinking about what you're thinking about, like your idea, your object, the thing, and then that idea basically has a counter thing, and you could call that the environment. We could label these as whatever, object, environment. And this gives this context, it gives it meaning, it gives it a boundary, right? If something doesn't start or stop, you can't think about it because you can't pick that out as an idea within your mental sphere. All ideas have to have a beginning and an end, and thus they have an environment that is outside of themselves. And then for this to happen as well, for these two categories to exist, you have to have something that's not the object or the environment, separating the two of them, because there has to be some sort of boundary. There has to be some sort of boundary layer where the object ends, like something is creating the boundary layer between the object and the environment. Otherwise, the object and the environment they would have the same definition, like intellectually, conceptually. And so this thing keeping them apart, in some cases it might be you. There's nothing keeping this marker apart from the air other than like my experience of it. So even though I'm not the marker and not the air, that to have that separation requires the experience of it. It requires something else, me. So that else, you could think of it as a skin, as a boundary, as a separator, right? As awareness, right? Awareness is going to be the thing that is kind of between the object and the environment. And anyway, so you need those three categories are running all the time, no matter what you think about. So all of your ideas, you need to be consciously aware of what these three things are for the idea. Like if you have this object, what kind of environment does that make? And where is this? Where is the separator? Right, this kind of gets into the hard problem of consciousness, and it's like your system, you just know it has to follow this, and even if you can't do it, it's the goal. Like maybe it's not possible to have perfect truth or perfect thoughts, but so you have to know, well then what's just the goal by which I'm going to fall short of? And the goal is that your thinking has to have this framework. You have to have a positive, a negative, something else, and then you have to have a separator or an else or a between. You have to have a between, right? And so even this is interesting because for this between space here, we'll call this else energy, right? This between space here, its environment is both the object and the environment. The environment of this, the environment of the things separating positive and negative, are both collectively just the environment of the separator, right? These two things are both outside of it. So this thing is a concept, like I've given you this concept of this guy right here. So it has to be three things. It's itself, and then it's its environment, and so you get that, and that's sort of like observing the observing, right? If you become aware of awareness, you've gone into, you're thinking about thought. Is it T? Like what separates awareness from awareness? Right now when you're aware of being aware, what's separating you from that awareness that you're aware of? How could you observe something unless you're separate from it? Right? So that's thought, basically. And you go, okay, so this is, from the standpoint of thinking, both all the objects, all the awareness, and the awareness of the awareness are outside of thought. So outside of all of this, thought becomes, lo and behold, the object again. So what's outside of thinking is every other thought, right? And so what separates one thought from another thought, right? What's going to be the separating thing here? What separates one thought from another thought? And at that, you're down. You can't think about that. You can't possibly think about that. You can't have a thought about that. So we get to this void, and it doesn't really go any further. It just ends up in a string of T's, nonsensical, like whatever. But within that void, a thought could arise. And so you get back to this thing where everything is three things. It's a trinity of things. So even that trinity is a trinity of trinities inside of it. It's like that recursive thing of like everything is three things, both what it is, what it's not, and then the space in the middle. That pattern itself is recursively fractal, and so you just get this very much matches the behavior of a lot of things, like the standard model, the speed of light, energy, all these things. Does it fully? But a couple layers deep it does, because it has the right goal in mind. I know, it's like you have to adhere to these foundational laws about what things are. So your framework is that the world is three things, and there's three things of three things, right? So how do you come up with something that behaves, that explains the behavior of atoms while adhering to the foundational principles or the foundational truth that it's three things, right? So you have everything that you touch. We found that to be electromagnetism. There's just some sort of deflection going on the inside of atoms, or sometimes atoms like break apart. Tremendous energies can be released. You can shove them together. And so you have this behavior, and the behavior like a response to positive and negative charges or electricity. You can get things to charge and bend, And all of that, all of chemistry, almost all of physics, everything is all talking about the behavior of electrons or the electromagnetic field. They're like, what is an electron? And it's kind of a disturbance in the electromagnetic field. And so the electromagnetic field is the electricity, the charge, it's the substance of matter. The electromagnetic field is the substance of matter. So you could go out and look and like put your hand into water, and water is that H2O. The electromagnetic field of H2O is creating the perceptual experience that you call water. And so you can go into that and feel how it is that the electromagnetic field it feels and behaves and is if you go into it. When the electromagnetic field is being a marker, it doesn't exactly let you go into it. There's something going on where I can't go into it. It's a solid object, right? So, so when we're trying to do physics or we're trying to do chemistry, like particle physics, or chemistry, if you can do particle physics or chemistry, you're dealing with, what are the three things? Well, this is what you would call the ether, the electromagnetic field. That's the substance of things, right? And so then you have, and this is what we're calling negative. This is what electrons are. It's like there's a wave in the ether, and we call that movement, that wave. A wave is what it is. A wave is a basic category that you have to look at water to understand, right? So an electromagnetic event is a wave in the ether. What type of electromagnetic events are there? What types of waves are there? Well, there's the surface is always only doing, this. Like if you were to average it, the surface of any sort of field that you're talking about, anything that's a field has a boundary and a container where that field is and where that field is not. And then within that field, waves can happen, disturbances happen, and it just looks exactly like water. So electromagnetic fields are behaving exactly like water, all fields. And so fields conduct waves, and they conduct waves just like you see water conducting waves, is that the field can experience induction, and then those waves are like light. So when you see light, you're looking at a wave pattern in the electromagnetic field. When you're looking at what's an object then, right? So if the electromagnetic field is light and the waves in the electromagnetic field is light, what an object is when the electromagnetic field is rotating, torusing, right? A force is a current in the electromagnetic field. An object is a current in the electromagnetic field that's so fast and so strong that you can't push into it. When you touch it, it deflects, right? And so imagine a vortice in the electromagnetic field. It does a double torus. All vortices are a double torus because for this to be going down, the whole universe has to be feeding back into it. It's a circulation system. And the circulation system is driven by basically drive from positive to negative. And that's this mysterious force. You have positive, then you have negative, and then you have the ether in the middle, and that prevents them from coming together. And as it goes down, and it goes through the ether, there's resistance, and you get this right-hand rule rotation in the ether. So all objects, an object is this vortice is going so hard and so fast that it creates an actual object in the ether, even though everything is only ether. And you go, well, what is this? This is the, like when you point at an object, what do you go, what is that? Well, the substance of what that is here. That's what a tornado is, and it's the air. The tornado is the air. A particle or an object is a vortice in the ether. You go, what is that? It's the ether. Where's the ether? Everywhere, right? And then when you go and you study this, you can't really go into the current, right, without it deflecting you or tearing you apart, or maybe you go in and you break apart the whole whirlpool and the thing's not there anymore, right? But as long as it's there, you go in and this has a boundary because this is going so fast. Get a pressure washer or get like a laser thing and notice that, try and stick a piece of metal in it, something that can survive touching it. Maybe not your finger, it could cut it off, right? But if you try and stick something into it, it'll tend to it'll deflect it, it'll treat it like an object, right? So this movement of current, this hyper dense movement of force is what we're talking about when we're talking about objects. And then when you dig into it, there's nothing there. This is full of nothingness. The reason that this is here is because there's nothingness at the inside. All of this stuff right here doesn't exist in the traditional sense of the word because there's no nothingness inside of here. It's all ether, it's all water. So there's no thing there, it's just field. But if you actually remove the field, if you actually remove the somethingness by causing this big tornado around where the walls of the water are pushed out and basically the surface goes all the way down here, and so this is all surface. This is just fractally folded surface of the ether, and so it's making just tons of surface. And so in that surface, you can support patterns, which are waves, right? You could say there's three waves, DNA base codes. Atoms, electrons, quarks, like whatever, there's wave pattern in there. Wave pattern has information. Just the way that the light patterns on the surface, they have information. The light patterns inside the swirling vortex of an object or of matter have information, infinite amount of waves. I'm a vortex, but if you cut me open, all that information dumps out. All the waves that are carried on the inside of this thing bubble out, and you get, it's breaking down into things, right? But before it was broken down into things, every object is just a singular, coherent ether perturbation. And then at the core, even if you were to stick a probe in there, you don't find anything. So that's what we find when we're studying atoms, particles. That's what people find when they study themselves. Like when they look inward, when you try and find your looker, when you try and find your doer, there's nothing there at the core. Not right here where you're looking, not where the event is. There's nothing there. There's no one there. And so this is what I mean, like when we're doing a physics unification theory, it has to be like, everyone has to agree with everyone else, everyone's observations. They're all equally valid. You're all looking at the same thing. Whether you're using a particle collider or your own awareness looking at its awareness, you're still looking. Both of those are types of looking. So when you look at an object, no matter what the object is, it's going to be this thing where you look in and it's nothing there. And if you get a very simple, this is a complex object, like a torus where it's hurricaning, that's so much surface folded in on itself, wrapped around itself. That's a very complex object. If you're just looking at a super simple object, like maybe this is a quark or something like that, it's still, as you look into that, you go, there it is, right? I'm going to look into that. I'm going to look into this wave. It's right there. I see it. And then when you go and you try and touch it, nothing's there. I reach into nothingness. Or when I touch it, it's so ephemeral, it's almost like imaginary, because the wave I wanted to touch, with the instant I touch it, just more waves come out caused by my touch. So it's either imaginary, it's unreachable, or if I reach into it, I actually reach through it. Right. So this behavior of the ether is there at all sciences, all whatever. And so there's some sort of like, so you go, what's going on? How are these atoms created and stuff like that? It's like, you get this, you get the positive and negative. The swirling current around here is kind of like what we would call what seems like the electron orbital, the cloud, the location. And then as you get tighter and tighter in, as the wind gets deeper and more focused, right? It looks like we're going in and down. This starts getting faster and faster and faster, and then there's that deflection, there's that object. And it's at the bottom of and then surrounded by this big cloud. right? And what are we looking? We're always we're a thing, so we're on the surface somewhere else, or we're another tornado somewhere else looking over there, and that's where we look from. And you can either look from, like you're a wave, and so you can look from here, there's an eye here, and you can look at events here through the nothingness, through the emptiness, or this is all I as well, and you can look, that's the embodied perspective. They're both embodied perspectives, one of which is up and above, peaking up, climbing up into the nothingness, and looking out and surveying over everything, and one is falling down into the ether, into being, into fullness, and at that point you can see everything, you're participating in everything, you are the body of everything, right? So there's this, if you've seen cymatics, right, where you make a tone, if you make a tone or vibration, you'll see it induces certain wave patterns into water, right? So it's you've basically got speakers. This is a field. This is a more, the air is a more rarefied field, and this is like water, so it's a denser field. And the only place that you have a surface that can support waves, or a surface that can support anything, is these three things. You need a field. You need two different fields, and then the denser field forms a surface. So you have that three things. So there's always three. Whenever there's an object, if we're talking about atoms, if we're talking about anything, we're looking at a phenomenon happening at the surface between two fields of different densities. One of which could be said to be something, and the other one by which is kind of nothing. And so each field has its own like vibrations, right? Like speakers playing, like the heavens, the astrology. And then this field also carries sound, but the cymatic effect is different. But anyway, so this is this big tornado going down into, and so imagine a dirt devil. These tornadoes are like this. Very long, very skinny. And the longer it gets and the skinnier it gets, it learns how to protect itself. Like this kind of becomes life, these vortexes. And so it just gets very, very long, very, very skinny. Now imagine vibrations coming from somewhere, and that's going to distort the shape of the coil, the long coil, and so you'll get all sorts of different shapes. Or imagine even like a wider vortex. Like you could, if the vortex is going, and then you play the note onto it, and you'll get it, instead of a circle, you'll get maybe, the vortex might start doing that. And so while it's no longer a normal circular pattern, it's right, so here's how it's wanting to go, and then you apply like an archetype to it, a vibration from the non-existent ether above the ether. And so while the energy would normally want to be going like that, as it goes from positive to negative, it might start from the other waves passing through it. So basically waves from another dimension can alter the way the waves are moving from a lower dimension. Right, so when you look at cymatics, when you look at like sand, like the designs being made in sand from the vibration of a speaker, you're looking at a higher dimensional space shaping the form of the lower dimensional space. So this shaping is why you get like chemistry. you get the carbon. Why is it shaped like that? It's because it's doing this vorticey thing. And the torus, the three-dimensional torus, is being vibrated into that shape. And so all the energy is like swirling in whatever complex toroid pattern because of the imposition of the vibration from the sort of Platonic realm. And then as these vortices get more and more complex, you get that long thing that we call DNA. And then imagine you apply vibration to that, and you could get it to take all sorts of different weird shapes. Right? You basically have a string that can respond to vibration. And so that's why the periodic table lays itself out like in musical octaves or in harmonics and stuff. And there's just, as long as you understand what's going on when something is as long as you understand that the most rational, accurate way to understand something would be to be as three things. And so you have to try and you have to start with that Trinity concept and then shape the Trinity concept so that it matches reality, that it absorbs all of reality, so that you see everything fitting into those three categories. And then as everything fits into those three categories, you can kind of use it to think. And this is just the same as, like, it's not like the right answer necessarily, but it's just like having good posture, good technique, good form. Like when you're having good thinking, you come up with a Trinity, you come up with the yin yang, everything looks like that. That's healthy, correct thinking, because that's like the nature of your consciousness. Yeah, so here's a base symbol. So positive, negative, and then the electromagnetic field, sort of, or the separated charge. We'll see what that is, force. Whatever separates positive and negative is force, right? But this is also just all objects. Any thought, any concept, this is every other thought, every other concept, the environment for it, this is the context, or the splitter, the awareness, the experience, the thing separating the two, right? So then, E is the awareness, is the experience, right? What separates positive and negative? The experience. But from the standpoint of experience, both positive and negative are its environment. So this E minus is the environment of experience. What's the environment of the current experience that you're having? It's all thoughts, all objects, all environments, all things, all outsides. And then what is also in the environment of the environment is experience itself, is also experience, because you're experiencing experience. And so experience, which is kind of the past experiences, are also in your environment, right? This is separated by thought. And so thought Oh, no, this should be concepts. Yeah. Okay. So you have the object, you have not the object, and you have the experience or the awareness or the thing separating the two. From the standpoint of this experience, all of that stuff, the positive and the negative and the experience of it, is the environment within which the experience is happening. Your experience is happening in the context of all past experiences and all objects in all past experiences. That's the environment of experience. It's both. It's all of these three terms are the environment within which there is experience. So what separates one experience from another experience, right? You can have the experience of blue, green. What separates one from the other? That's thought. Thinking is what separates one. So what's separate from a thought? What's separate from a thought? Right? Like if thinking is that which separates one experience from another experience, and so then you have thought in oppositional to what's the environment of the experience? All other experiences plus all other thoughts. Or all other experiences. So your thinking itself is what separates concepts. Right? So here's a concept. So we're back to what's every object. Like it loops. So here's a concept. What's the environment of a concept? What's not a concept? A concept is not all other concepts. A concept is not all other experiences. A concept is not an experience. Right? So this is external to conceptualization, external to a concept. Everything is external to a concept. So everything is the environment of a concept. And you go, well, then what separates a concept from every other thing in existence? And that's thought. Thought being your direct experience, your direct coupling to reality. And that is how I'm defining thought here. So your thinking is your direct experience of this moment, because when you touch there, where you're touching is separating one concept from everything else. Anytime that you isolate a concept, you are there looking at yourself, like that radiant beauty, that glory that is aware, that separates things, that emerges between things, right? You can see it there as you think. And so we're back with thought. So thought is not the concept that you're seeing, and thought is not all the other concepts that you're seeing either. And thought, so you have everything is three things: the thought, and then everything that's not thought, everything real and everything imaginary other than that. So what separates that? What separates that from everything else? And that's where you get to this non-thinking. What separates thinking from not thinking? And this thing kind of breaks down about right here. It gets a little weird where your thought is the same, and you get this will chain together. Because this absence of thought here is attracted to this thought, or something along those lines. Like the void of thought has this attraction, this connection to this wants to chain together. And so you have this structure where there's basically 1, 2, 3, 4 different limbs, 4 different base pairs, and this will chain together